Revolution and Beer Show. This is going to be a hard start here on this one. We spent a lot of time last week talking about other stuff. The only thing I want to say on this show is that Joe Walsh, Representative Joe Walsh, not the rock star Joe Walsh. Although the rock star Joe Walsh would be cool too.
Yeah,
but the Representative Joe Walsh, or the ex-Representative Joe Walsh, come on the show, pal. You want to have a discussion about guns? You want to have a discussion about society? You want to have a real one with people who know stuff and will argue with you about facts, which I'm not certain that you have a grasp on? Come on the show. Let's have a conversation about it. Anytime. We will schedule that, and we will do it around your schedule. So there's the throwdown, pal. So anyways, so we spent a lot of time talking about a lot of stuff. We held our guests over for an entire week. They've been held hostage here in Data's Cafe in Rogers Park.
We had to sedate this guy.
We did. The only thing that we've done is we plied them with Balkan beer. And Balkan food, which is Balkan food, is what Data's is known for. They're BYOB, so you can choose your own beer. But I know you guys wanted to kind of dig into some of this. Yeah. What they serve here is burek, and burek is a phyllo dough wrapped generally with spinach or a Balkan cheese, which is sort of akin to a slightly sweeter goat cheese. Do it with spinach. We've done it with pumpkin at home. Right. I've eaten it in Sarajevo and all over the Balkans. They do it right here. They do it well. And this is an endorsement of Data's as much as you need to know where to go to get good burek. There are other places in the city, and we've tried most of them that do sell burek. And some of it is too bready or too greasy or what. But this is done just right. It's really nicely done.
There you go.
And then we have a sampling of Balkan beer. We did a Croatian beer earlier. We had a Serbian beer. Just so I'm not leaving out my Serbian friends. We've got a Bosnian beer, and we did do a Greek beer. I tried to find a Macedonian beer. There's a great beer. That I don't know if you can get in the States that's made in Macedonia, and we can't name brands here necessarily. But we're trying to cover the whole peninsula here. There is a really strong regional flavor. That said,
they'll be listed on the website.
They will be listed on the website. We can name them on the website. They're really enjoyable beers. I want to give a toast to our guests here. Chris Patterson.
Thank you.
Here.
The author of 21, The Epitome of Perseverance. And we've got Whitney and Adam here from Stone Soup Theater.
Mm-hmm. Cheers.
I missed the costumes, I have to say.
Exactly.
Last season, that was nice.
My fairy crown was pretty awesome.
It was pretty awesome.
I missed the fairy crown?
You missed it.
Although your t-shirts are very
and you missed
awesome.
Brian somewhere between Jack Kerouac and a Confederate soldier. So I'm not sure.
I like to blur the lines, what can I say?
But this is the book that we're talking about. We're actually broadening this conversation. We left it in the middle of the conversation last week. We wanted to start talking about real change and things that can be done to change this situation. Things, Chris, that you're working on, right. That you were working on today on the south side, but you're working on every day here in Rogers Park and Lakeview. And a couple of things that we wanted to start dispelling is the mythology around violence in the street. First of all, we wanted to get a perspective on it. We were talking, Chris, you grew up in the city. I've been here for a very long time. Brian's been in the city for probably better than a dozen years, 10 years. The city that I moved into, and I had some understanding of the city. I remember in the 60s, my parents would drive us through Skid Row downtown.
Right.
As an example of what not to do in our lives. The city, at least for me, my perspective, and I see it working in Inglewood and having worked with some foreclosure victims on the west side, the city still feels safer to me than it's ever been. Your thoughts on that?
I think in some areas that's true.
Yeah.
So I've seen the city throughout a lifetime evolve and prosper, and it's actually one of the most beautiful cities now. It rivals anything that can happen in New York or Los Angeles or some parts of the world even, and yet Inglewood still looks like Inglewood.
Yeah.
The west side of Chicago, Jackson Park,
Yep.
you got north of Howard Street. Not much has changed, right? And so while billions of dollars go into creating a beautiful environment, aesthetic look, none of the money sort of trickles down to the areas that are most affected. And I think in this day and age, with the commuter situation being what it is, you can avoid a lot of spots, and so it's easy. But I don't necessarily know that if people in, say, in Inglewood or Roseland or again Jackson Park feel that it's any safer.
Well, I guess the reason, and I didn't want to take anything away necessarily from real issues, but was to start quantifying this issue a little bit more, so that a couple of things have happened recently. Now with the looming potential of the concealed carry law, the availability of guns, the doubling down of the gun industry to eliminate regulation, which will allow more guns to flow into the hands of people who shouldn't have it, or onto the streets of Chicago.
Right.
That's one of those issues. So I guess I'm trying to boil it down because there really is a fear and paranoia factor in those parts of the city where the fear is exploited to the benefit of the gun industry.
Sure. The status quo in general.
Or the status quo in general.
Yeah, I think to add to that, it's not like people are not enjoying themselves and coming out on their porch, right, and not walking their community, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to phrase it or create a narrative that people in the community are terrified. That's not necessarily.
As a skinny white guy, I can, I can testify. I worked in Inglewood for several years, and I got to know quite a few people, and I walked around there with them, and just like any other area, any like lower income area, and I'm from the South. With a bunch of poor white people, and there are areas you don't want to go walking through at certain times of day, and you won't see anybody of a darker skin color in that area, but you will get shot or you will get jumped. It's real.
Happen.
It happens.
But it's not. It doesn't happen that much, right? So statistically, what we're looking at,
violent crime is down.
Violent crime is actually down.
Yep.
But yet we've created this narrative right now where all over the world people are talking about Chicago and there's violence, when in all actuality it's down. So why is that, right? And it just so happens that there have been people who have been working behind the scenes for years trying to create this concealed carry. But it's very hard to do when you're saying,
for the
listen.
money.
Yeah, for the money. And it's hard to do when you say, listen, our city is actually down, so how do we justify a concealed carry, right? And so then you create this narrative where you talk about violence being...
fear.
You ratchet up the fear, and everyone's scared of these particular areas, and these guys are monsters, they're gangbangers, they're...
Let me ask you this. How much of a fear-mongering do you think goes into justifying keeping investment exactly where it is and keeping money where it already is?
Well, so, I mean, can we mention, like, the prison industrial complex?
Go.
We're talking about that.
No censorship here, pal.
Yeah, exactly, right? So you're looking at... There's a lot of structural racism that goes on, right, and that feeds. And you can look at, historically, generation after generation, people consistently live in the same communities, and those communities don't change, right? The school systems don't get any better. You're not, children are not coming out of there with any significant higher scores, right? And so they're better than themselves. Hospitals are being closed, right? And it's just like you look at communities that have affluence, right? And you see that there's no shooting in the middle of the street, right? And then if you structurally keep a community impoverished and without education and without job resources, then
and among the violence very quickly, I just wanted to tell our viewers, stay tuned at the end of our show, because after the credits, we're going to post all of these contacts and the information where you can find out more about Stone Soup Theater, who's putting on a play based upon Chris's story, and where they can get the book,
right,
and where they can connect with some of the organizations that you are a part of, and then we want to hear from you. It's important to hear your feedback, because we're trying to occupy the media here a little bit, and we want you to become part of that community.
And hey, if you want to come hang out with us when we're shooting, and pitch in ideas before or after during, hit us up. We'll let you know where we'll be at.
But one of the things that we want to do is we want to get to the root of the problem, which is why when you ask me, we don't have any censorship here, because that starts diverting us from the issue. And you were mentioning schools and hospitals and closing down communities, and I know, having being in Inglewood frequently, street after street, building after building are board ups. And I'm starting to see that more on the north side, by the way, sadly. But it shouldn't even happen. It shouldn't happen in any neighborhood. It's affecting these neighborhoods disproportionately. And I think because those neighborhoods have been so neglected, so forgotten by the broader society for so long, and we allow mythology about the root causes, like, I don't go after Mr. Walsh without some knowledge about what he's actually talking about. This isn't just blindly. He's actually putting out exactly.
Get down to these issues and sort them out.
And he's putting out some real falsehoods, but not just him. A lot of people on the right, a lot of people on the left, and a lot of people in the middle are buying into a lot of these things, like welfare and families not being intact, and no fathers being in the home, and those things, and all of these people on the south and west side just want a handout.
Sure, entitlement, right?
Exactly, exactly. And but those aren't causal. Those aren't.
Right.
Those are symptoms of a greater disease and a greater issue that's not being addressed. One of those things is hope. And that's one of the things you talk about in 21, the Epitome of Perseverance, is the importance of hope.
Right.
And even as a faith person, with a strong faith, you incorporate a lot of that into the book as well.
Sure. I think it's, growing up, again, like I said in the last episode, I could always talk about the excuses I had. But it's kind of true, right? So there was no Bill Huxtables to look outside of. Growing up, a very realistic individual that I am right now, I feel like I have the potential to be like really smart one day. And, I was able to look out the window and see people who weren't necessarily always working.
Yeah.
But yet having things. I didn't know the value of education. And you can see, like, once you tell a young man, so there's so many young men and women in our community who have a real problem with reading, yet our education system is passing them along. And when you're 17 and 18 years old and you know you can't read and the world is telling you you can be nothing without a college education, is there real hope that you can actually become something? Not really. And so I think that just getting back to the root and just trying to figure out how we deal with, young people in the community and how we're dealing with some of the core issues, right? That it does affect you when you don't have the proper education. It does affect you when you've got PTSD and you're only 11 years old because so many gunshots outside your community. And the things are not being addressed, right? And so in our communities, what we're seeing, ONE Northside, the community I work for, the community organization I work for, I'm an organizer there around violence prevention. We're a member-based organization, and our members constantly have to fight for funding, constantly have to fight for a GED training and parenting classes. And the real problem is why are we providing GED training in the first place, or GED classes in the first place, when our school system should be having them?
It's an uphill battle for people who are already struggling at the bottom of that hill.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll give you an alternative, but we won't give you the first option, right? And so the first option should be good class education for everyone, for all the kids in the city. And not necessarily as an alternative. If that doesn't work for you, we'll give you a GED.
Yeah. Or if you can afford to send your kids
and if you can afford,
to a school because you bought into the idea that the public schools are failing.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they are failing, it's because for the last 25 or 40 years, politicians have been throwing sand in the eyes of educators for so long that now they can actually point to it as a failure, so that they can justify doing things like charter schools and what have you.
Right, with enough pressure.
The money aspect again.
Finally getting to the point where people are starting to see that TIF money is not even going to where it was.
Yeah.
And so you can say, okay, well, the schools don't have enough money to support the students, then why not give the schools more money, right? And why not provide? So I don't know. It seems very structural and it seems very intentional.
There was one other thing that came up in our overall discussion that I thought was really interesting, and that was about the lack of moral and ethical leadership in the country. And I want everybody's view on that. What I mean by that, because that could be a very vague statement. What I mean by that is down here in the community at the citizen level, we're getting nickel and dime by statutes and minor taxes and school closures and privatization,
public services,
red light cameras, and all this stuff. And we're expected to follow the rules. And if we don't, the penalty is often very severe, particularly in terms of how a lot of people are struggling to make ends meet. You get a $1,000 fine or you get a $400 ticket, you're in trouble in a lot of communities. In contrast, what we're seeing at the top is we're seeing people that flout the law, that act with impunity outside of the law, or where the law doesn't apply outside of reasonable and human ethics and morality, with impunity and without accountability. It creates a system in which the people who are struggling feel that they have every justification to cut corners, especially if you're really struggling on those margins, because the people at the top can do what they want.
Sure.
Is that a component of what you see with violence on the streets right now in the city of Chicago?
Right.
Or is there something else that's the specific root cause here that we should really be addressing?
So I think with accountability, we're still looking at accountability for electeds and those in charge. It's so there's a very big hypocrisy centered around the fact that everyone. So it's really popular in America to know that Illinois politics is crooked, or it comes off as very crooked.
I've heard.
Yeah, right. So we've got so many governors and aldermen and city council people always having their hand in the midst of junk, right? And
wouldn't be our buddy Joe Moore, would it?
Well, what happens is, right?
Thank you, buddy.
Right, keep moving. What we're looking at is that's acceptable, right? And that's acceptable now. And you live in a culture where everyone knows the blight that's going on, but yet when you commit it on a smaller scale, like in the streets, a lot of the things that are going on, selling weed, hanging out on the corners, not working, has become acceptable to a small group of individuals, right? And so we can put our fingers on those little tiny things because they feed a larger industry, but yet the people who actually govern our areas are not held to the same level of accountability, and it's almost hypocritical to enforce one but not yet the other.
There's no standard.
Right, there's no standard. Right.
So everybody's just sort of winging it.
Feeding to the hope again. Yeah. You can elect another elected official into office, but in the recesses of your mind, there's always a doubt. They're probably just like the last person that just kind of replaced them, Yeah. And I don't know. I think that at one point we just need that standard to be raised, and we need someone to come in there and not necessarily feed the mayor's office, right? Who's making all the decisions for people who should be making their own decisions. So it's complicated and it's frustrating to see that it's actually happening.
And it's interesting that all of these the different sides, the Republicans and Democrats and what have you, they're all moving the ball forward, but they're moving the ideological ball forward. They're not moving the solution ball forward.
Well, what direction are they moving it forward to? I mean, there's maybe they're not rolling it backwards necessarily, although I think you can make an argument around a lot of things that they are. But what team are they playing for? I guess would be a different question that I would throw into the mix.
Right.
But they're not getting to the solutions.
No, they're not even.
They're talking about what we were talking about before. Right. They're talking about the welfare mothers and the
closing
the
schools.
Handouts and the closing schools
closing schools where hypothetically there's 1,000 students in a school, but when we open a new one, it can only hold 500.
Yeah.
I don't know whether
everything becomes a balance sheet. It's not about humanity anymore. Yeah. It's not about
safety at all, right? Because closing schools is obviously a safety matter. They put millions of dollars into a new safe passage program because they know that what they've created is unsafe. And it's like, we're accepting that.
Militarization is good, you know, but public education, bad.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what you were working on on the south side?
Yeah, so this morning we were on 69th and Halstead.
Yeah.
With community leaders, a few religious institutions, and a variety of young men and older men from subcultural organizations.
Yeah.
Subcultural organizations such as GDs, Blackstones, Vice Lords, some of the representatives of the Latino folk community in the Humboldt Park area.
Yep.
And these men and women actually took to the streets, about 200 strong, to protest against violence in the community.
Do you think, in the last couple of minutes here, because I really want to get this in, do you think that there is a real commitment for them to work on solving the problem? And do you think these are the right people to begin solving the problem? Is it more police? Is it more community? Is it more these folks?
I think it's a mixture, right?
Okay.
So I don't want to say that one is more important than the other, but it definitely needs to be more community involvement. And I think the men today who demonstrated and walked today are on the right track. Just need to continue to feed the fire and the passion that they have towards solving violence in the community. And they're the very ones who are saying, listen, we're from this community and we want to start having a dialogue with, but not around, young people who are actually committing these crimes.
Right.
And it's important to have someone there like you who is also from that community but has been through, you know, the terrible, you know, part of that process, and come back to help them kind of get perspective on it.
You know, and I feel very fortunate to be able to have organizing experience now to help facilitate that change, right? When people do want to change, we have a structure and a direction in which to go.
And I've asked you, and hopefully not to put you on the spot, but we would love to have all of those people come on this show and have a heart-to-heart, honest conversation with them about this issue, know their experience without judgment, without being assaulted or attacked. Let them speak their mind and their heart, and then really get to the issue of what's going on in their community by people that are affected by it, invested by it, and sometimes affecting it, or often affecting it. But
No,
I think it would be important to have that dialogue. And like I said, you know, it would be an honest and open dialogue. You know, we're not going to censor you on this show.
No, you're not.
You can say what you need to say.
So I'll send out the invites. We'll make that happen.
Nice. And I wanted to get Whitney and Adam to talk a little bit about Stone Soup Theater, and again, and tell folks about the upcoming show that's still kind of tentative at this point. It's going to happen,
It is going to
but you're sort of working through all of the machinations of theater, which I know can be a little complex sometimes.
Well, we're Stone Soup Theater Project. We are a theater project serving Uptown, Edgewater, Andersonville, Rogers Park, committed to bringing affordable and relevant theater from the streets onto the stage.
Yeah.
From the stage onto the streets to support and
The other would
cultivate.
be cool too.
That one too. That's a lot of streets though. To cultivate safer communities and stronger neighborhoods, because we believe coming together over the arts and having these conversations in a way that might feel a little safer is a good way to start brokering a dialogue that can hopefully step towards change. We're currently adapting Chris's memoir into a play. Our company member Katie Abaskal is doing that. 21, The Epitome of Perseverance.
Available on Amazon.
Yes, and worth the read.
And Barnes.
And our stage reading right now is tentatively October 17th and 18th.
Okay.
It'll be at United Church of Rogers Park.
Wow, all right.
Right up there on Morse.
We're definitely going to let people know about that. And I'm sorry, Adam, we're going to run out of time here because there's a couple of things I wanted to get in. But did you have a nice lunch and some good beer?
Oh, this was the highlight of my day. I can't even tell you guys. No better afternoon to spend it with you guys.
That's all we're about. Folks, we're going to stick with this. Hopefully we can get some voices from the community that can really speak strongly about this issue, and then we're going to help work towards a solution. Want you to help us work towards a solution as well. In the meantime, if you really want to understand this issue a little bit, and if you want to understand the quality of people that come from this city and read an important book, check out Chris Patterson's 21, The Epitome of Perseverance. It's a powerful, important book for understanding what's going on right now in this city and having a perspective on it beyond the corporate media, beyond what you're being told, beyond the mythology a little bit.
Step outside of the fear game and learn a little bit about what really happens.
Exactly. We could solve this issue, and I think conversation is a way to do it here. So on that note, I'm going to thank our guests, Chris Patterson and Whitney and Adam from Stone Soup Theater Company.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Here's to the holidays.
All 365 of them.
All right.
And make sure to hit us up on revolutionofbeer.com and watch for the information to get in touch with us after the show. Find out where we're taping. Come hang out. Send us questions. Send us show ideas. Criticisms. We won't give you telephone numbers, but you can send us a nasty email if you want to.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
I'm just waiting for the catalyst. I'm waiting for a change, 'cause it's gonna come.